What is one human life worth? Some consider life insurance to be one of the most important assets for most people. But what if something happens to you, like a disability or even death? It's about more than just protecting your family. It's also about keeping your legacy alive for the next generation. We're going to talk about why right now on UBS Trending. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of UBS Trending. I'm Anthony Pastore. Thanks so much for being with us today. I'm joined today by Dante Oriente to talk about life insurance, which, by the way, it's not a topic I think that most people, Dante, want to talk about. I've heard a joke in my life saying that the loneliest person at a party is the life insurance salesperson in the corner, because everybody finds it to be depressing and they find it to be a little bit sobering, as I said. But we're going to get into more of the nitty-gritty here, right? Okay. So what are some of the reasons? Because I think a lot of people say, well, life insurance is not for me. I don't need that. It's fine. What are some of the reasons that people say to you when you're talking to folks why life insurance isn't really for them?
No, that's a great place to start with it. And first and foremost, there's usually three main reasons we tend to come across. Number one is a lot of individuals out there, they don't truly understand what life insurance can do for them, or also the limitations on their own policies. They might see it as just being that death benefit. As you had mentioned, it's the lonely guy in the corner. He's trying to sell someone a policy that's potentially not even for them. And that's the next thing, too. Right. You're selling wealth for the next generation. And a lot of individuals we talk to, they're constantly coming to us and they're saying, my kids will get what they get. I don't need to give them more. Whatever's left for them at the end of the day, that's what they'll receive. And then the last aspect that ties into play with it is that cost factor. A lot of people look at their expenses that are ongoing and say, I don't need this additional expense. I don't want to go out of pocket for it. But what we tend to find is there are a lot of gaps in that logic from there, because kind of looping it all back together, as I mentioned before, a lot of people have insurance through work, or a lot of people have policies they bought 10 years ago, but it might not be the right policy for them today. So it's definitely something that they should continue the conversation on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people sort of have this misconception that life insurance is something that you have if, say, you pass away and your spouse needs to cover the house bills or anything else that might be happening. Sure. But there's so much more to it than this. That's one aspect, right? But there's so much more to it. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the importance of life insurance first and foremost. Why is it so important? Why should people watching today who have said, I don't really need it, why should they be thinking about it right now?
Yeah, and when I tend to view life insurance and talk with clients, I always view it through the wider risk management conversation. And in a lot of instances, there's insurance-based solutions that can answer four different main questions about the risk under the risk, four main questions about the dangers under the risk spectrum. Number one, what ends up happening if I become incapacitated and I can't work and I can't work for my family?
Right,
that's where
no income coming
they have
in.
no income coming in. So that's where disability insurance comes into play. Secondly, what happens if I need assistance medically for a prolonged period of time, especially later in life? Long-term care insurance can solve that problem. Next, what if I have legal action brought against me? Someone gets injured in my home or on property that I own. It's in its name, property and casualty insurance, better known as P&C. And lastly, what we're here to talk about today is centered around how will my family be supported if I'm no longer here, if I die unexpectedly. And that's where the true importance of life insurance is. It's about supplying and supporting the individuals that we love and help transferring our wealth more effectively. Take it beyond it being a check for my survivors or an additional expense. View it as that peace of mind. View it as that asset class that you can pass along and support your family when you no longer can.
Right. It's interesting, the more I live in the world, and it's sort of like a cliche, I hear more and more stories from whether it's family or friends of friends that didn't think they needed all those different types of insurance that you've rattled off, but eventually that they did, and they wish they had it, or if they did have it, they were thankful they had it. Disability, property, and somebody fell in somebody's home, and they had to figure out how to pay for that. They didn't have property and casualty insurance. No. So those kind of things, you don't think you need it, but that's what it is.
At the drop of a dime.
At the drop of a dime, exactly. All right, so let's talk about some of those situations where life insurance is a good solution then, Dante. Let's break it down. Does it make sense for one person? Does it make more sense for a family? Does it make more sense for a couple? Do you have to have kids, grandkids? I know there are lots of different situations here.
Yeah, and we tend to focus on three main scenarios or three main situations: family protection, estate tax planning, and then wealth transfer maximization.
Right.
Now, the one that a lot of people are familiar with is that family protection aspect. It's making sure you have enough assets and income streams set aside for your family in the event that you were to pass away. So what does that look like? It's working out your expenses and identifying maybe some of those key things that you want to take care of, whether it's mortgage and other liabilities and debt. Replacing lost income, especially if the primary breadwinner is to pass away. And then lastly, it's looking towards that future. It's seeing what are those expenses we maybe want to cover for our children, whether it's a wedding or college or something along those lines. And actually, from this standpoint, you're probably going to come across one of the most affordable life insurance options out there with term life insurance, which essentially what it is, it's in its name. You're covered for a certain period of time where you're paying a premium, and if you were to pass away during that time, your beneficiaries or your heirs or your family will have a check written for them, which they can use to hopefully meet their living needs.
Right. And what about estate tax planning? I know that's a topic that's really important to many of our clients at UBS.
Yeah, it's definitely a common concern for a lot of the high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals. I talk about it all the time. People pass away and they're still worried about trying to save money from Uncle Sam. And people in death are no different, right?
That's right.
And so what we tend to see, though, more recently, this hasn't really been a pressing issue in the last few years. And this is due to the current levels associated with the lifetime federal gift and state exclusion number. Essentially what that is right now is it's a certain asset threshold, which states that if your assets, add everything together, your homes, your property, your investment assets, if you're under that, you're not going to owe the federal government an estate tax. And right now that level is at roughly $13 million on an individual basis and $26 million for a married couple. As you can probably tell, it's a pretty high number.
It is, yes.
But all good things aren't going to last forever. And actually that number is set to be cut roughly in half. This was only a temporary measure, and beginning in 2026, we can call it, if it's at 26 million for a married couple, you might only have 13 million. If people are unaware of this situation, they're probably in for a rude awakening from an estate tax standpoint.
Right, so this is something they should consider here. This is the
Definitely.
estate planning insurance, right?
Definitely.
And then also, I know a lot of folks also out there are looking to transfer their wealth to their heirs or grandkids, kids, but they don't want to do it when they're gone. They'd like to see them maybe have some of that today or at some point. What's the wealth transfer maximization here?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of times, and this might sound a little odd in the beginning, it's wealth transfer maximization through estate minimization. And essentially what that is...
Sounds like opposites, doesn't it?
Yes, it does sound like opposites. And in a lot of those situations, it's looking at your overall lifestyle and seeing, do I have extra income streams or do I have extra money that's sitting aside that I don't need? Because if you're not spending it and you're just saving it and investing, it's only going to build your wealth up more. So let's talk about strategies and goals of how we can remove it. And we actually have a perfect example of that I've come across in a lot of instances. In most of these situations, when people think about this, they're thinking about Social Security or pension.
That's right.
Or annuity income, those low-hanging fruit of income streams. But more recently, we've actually seen a certain type of asset be used more to fund life insurance policies. And that's actually with retirement assets. In the past, retirement assets were one of the best estate planning tools because when you were to pass away, majority of heirs or majority of beneficiaries had the ability to stretch that income and stretch that tax implication throughout their lifetime, which is great. If you're 40 years old, you're spreading that over 50 plus years potentially, so you might not get dinged with a big tax bill.
Right.
However, recently, due to the Secure Act that went into place in 2019, that all changed. Individuals who are inheriting retirement accounts today, post-2020, for the most part, they need to distribute those funds within 10 years. And a lot of people might not be prepared for that expense. I was actually talking with a couple clients in the San Diego area, and they were concerned about the estate tax. They were concerned about their situation. They actually had roughly 70% of their assets in retirement accounts. And when we started talking about these changes that went into effect, they were worried about, I want to pass along to my kids a more tax efficient method of my money.
Right.
And that's where we kind of flip the script a little bit. Instead of using their income from work, we decided to start taking earlier distributions from their retirement accounts, pay the taxes out of pocket, that's the estate minimization, paying that tax today, and then using it to fund a 10-pay life insurance and essentially replace that retirement account with the proceeds of a life insurance policy. And one other note I'll make with it, you want to fund it in a special type of trust, a special vehicle, which is known as an irrevocable life insurance trust, better known as an ILIT, because that's going to be held outside of your state. So it's not going to be included in that estate tax calculation. So at the end of the day, for this situation, what we were able to do was replace a fully taxable asset that the beneficiaries were going to receive with a tax-free benefit from life insurance. I'd say it's a pretty good trade for them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Dante, thanks so much. We're just out of time here. I know that for our audience, obviously, if they want to, they have to look inside their own house, find out if it's something that they want to do for what their needs are, and to review their current policies. As you said, sometimes they haven't looked at it for 10 years, so something to consider, especially when they're kind of going through their plans for the next decade or 2 decades. Good idea to do. Dante, thanks so much. Thanks for giving us that terrific rundown. Thank you. Good stuff here and lots of options. And by the way, for those of you out there who may have questions about this, you can always refer to your financial advisor and they can connect you with the right person to talk about your life insurance needs depending on all the things we talked about today. Lots of great content there. You can also find on our website at ubs.com/views. Thanks everybody for joining us. And again, if you have any questions, talk to your financial advisor. Until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. Have a great rest of your day, and remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. See you soon.